cloud. Okay, let me pause it while we're chit-chatting. Hi, everyone. This is Robin Riddle. I'm with Brain Support Network and Stanford, run caregiver support programs for both. And we're glad to have so many people already signed up, and I'm sure more will come in. And we have Candy's our moderator today, and we have a few people that we know have already told us in advance that they have something to say, something to share with everyone. And so we'll go through some of those folks first, and then Candy will just open it up to whoever wants to share. So we are recording, and we ask if you don't want to have your whole name out there on the web, then change your name to just maybe your first name. And Denise is trying to help me with that as well. And we are recording, as I said, and we'll share the recording on our website, probably on the Brain Support Network YouTube channel. And Jordan is taking notes, and so we'll have their notes available. So everything will be shared with the world, and so we look forward to hearing what people have to share today. So take it away, Candy.
Okay, and one other thing that we discussed earlier too, Robin, we just want to, if you have more than 3 points, we'll just go through the first 3, and then when we have time, circle back. And I think maybe the best thing we've decided to is to allow, rather than people just chiming in when people are like presenting their 3 points, just give people a chance to, to get through their little talk that they're going to do, and then maybe add your questions or comments to the chat, and then we'll try to get back to everybody that way. So our first speaker today is John, and go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, hi, thank you. And thank you, Robin, for putting this together. And, I have to say the first thing that came to my mind immediately when you said, what have I learned? I said to slow down. And I think that's going to be kind of the overlying thing and what I have to say here, because everything you're going to have to do just has to go slower. And anyway, the first thing is believe your eyes as things are changing. When you're in those first stages, recognize what's going on and take it to heart. Everyone's behind the curve when it comes to these diseases, and everyone's in denial to a certain degree, but the person who's being afflicted is in denial to what's going on, trying to cover it up, hiding incidents from loved ones as they occur. You're going to see unusual acts or faux pas that occur that are probably hard to understand, and the results sometimes hard, because when they try to fix it, they only get it only gets worse. But like I say, everyone's behind the curve, including the medical field too. I think they've gotten better over the years, but you got to really articulate what's going on with the doctors, because they have to get the whole picture, and you're the only one with the whole picture in the end, because people from the outside are going to be maybe pushing back on you that, oh, it's not all that bad, but believe what you see and do the best you can with it. The second thing is that every case is different. I don't necessarily mean clinically as much as practically. There, as the patient caregiver dynamic goes on. If the patient's a parent, you have the obvious thing that we probably saw our parents taking care of our grandparents, and we knew this was part of the life journey, and somehow didn't know when it was going to come and how it was going to be presented to us. But all that was one of the things that we're kind of ready for in some way. If it's your spouse, that's a whole different dynamic, because if you're dealing with your parents, you still have your spouse to support you. And then all of a sudden, if your spouse is the one, you've lost your support and you still have the added responsibility. So that is different too. If it's a sibling or a coworker or just a neighbor or somebody, you're on the outside looking kind of, and family dynamics kick in that way. The gender, I think, makes a difference. I think men are a little bit more hard-headed about accepting these things. And, I can put the Christmas tree lights up again. I did it last year, and I can do it again this year. And by God, I'm going to take them down in 2 weeks too, when it's time. I think also the age of the patient is going to be significant. as far as, the younger someone is, the more unlikely you'd be able to recognize it necessarily. And I think it's added pressure to you. And the point being that not only is every case unique, your case will be unique too. And I think you'll have unique concerns. And finally, I want to just talk about the stressors that are involved. I mean, if you're the main caregiver, you're really important and you cannot break down. You've got to take care of yourself first. And you're going to have obvious stressors on you. You're going to wake up in the morning and have to dress someone, feed someone, bathe someone. Those are obvious stressors, but you're also dealing with big picture life changes. Your expectations change. Even if it's your parents, you had a kind of a plan for their golden years, and that all is changing. That house in the mountains or on the beach, no. And certainly within your personal life, if it is your spouse, there's going to be subtle lifetime changes at first, lifestyle changes rather, changes at first, and then they'll grow as time goes on. And also, whether it's parents or your spouse, relationship changes, that the responsibilities within a relationship are changing. And you may not recognize that directly, but those are stressors on you. Those are added stressors on you that just make everything more difficult. And if you can understand, oh, this is all part of the process, I think it makes it all somewhat easier for you just to recognize your own unique changes. And all is to say, you gotta slow down. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you for that. That was great, great points, John. We really appreciate it. So next, Diane, are you here? Diane Weasel?
I don't see her here yet, so we'll maybe come back to her.
Okay. So next up is Doug then.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Sure. One thing I just wanted to comment about John, though, he says everybody's different. But part of the problem is you got people that, have been dealing with PSP for quite a while or whatever you're dealing with, and people that have just started. And there are some common themes, I think, that people need to plan for in advance. I mean, the bottom line is that the person is going to physically deteriorate. They're going to go from walking to a walker to a wheelchair to bed. I mean, so that progression is going to happen. So I think part of being honest with people that are new to the disease is to kind of prepare them for at least the stuff that's common that they're going to be encountering so that they can plan ahead. But getting to my things, one is to basically prepare a detailed set of instructions. First of all, the assumption is the person with the disease is going to pass before the caregiver, but that may not necessarily be true. And so you need to find out who's going to be the one that you're going to pass the baton to if you go, or even if you don't, so that somebody's kind of behind you that knows, where your accounts are, where your bills are, what's on auto pay. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things that people need to know. And I think putting that together is, it's a lot of work, but it needs to be done because at some point somebody's going to have to do it. And I've seen a lot of cases where people didn't have anything to go off of, and it was very difficult for them. So the other thing, and I won't take a lot of time, is to prepare a budget. These diseases tend to be very expensive. And so, the first $80,000 a year that we make goes to Diane's healthcare. And that's on the low end. People that end up in institutions, it can be substantially higher than that. So you need to kind of figure out how, and you may not be there when you start, but you need to figure out how you're going to deal with the financial issues that you're going to be facing. And a lot of these diseases can go on for years. So anyway, you need to put a plan together. That's what I have.
Okay, great. So that's awesome. Great points. And there's a couple things that I didn't do that I wish I had too. So thank you for that. So our next speaker is Tim. Is Tim here?
I don't think I see Tim yet. I'll text him as well.
Okay.
Maybe go next down.
Okay, so the next is Jane. Are you back, Jane?
Yes.
There. So what would you like to add?
Well, I'm somewhat on the early side, I think, with my spouse's Parkinson's, but I think the main thing to recognize for him and for me is this is not just him, it's both of us. And I feel that there's a dearth of support around the emotional, psychological aspects. It really hasn't been offered very much, and it seems to me because of that loss of, or the changing of the relationship, that it's really important to have some kind of together therapy, for me, that is, because it helps through that, those periods of disappearing because of depression, anxiety about the future, how one can together manage these things. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's really true. I totally agree on all of those things. So, okay, so Jane, so boy, we've gone through this faster than I thought we would. So I'm up next. My top three things that I could think of that I hadn't seen on anybody else's list were about mistakes. You're going to make them, and you're going to feel guilty after your loved one dies and wish you had done things differently, and you're always second guessing yourself. And hindsight is always 20/20. So try to understand that and give yourself a break. My son came to me, after my husband had died, and I was going on about, oh gosh, I did this and that, and I can't believe I didn't think about this before. And he said, you know what? I don't know why you're so hard on yourself. He said, if you hadn't been doing the things you did, none of us would have made it. I mean, I wish you would just give yourself credit for that. So that was kind of an eye-opening thing to me, and it's a good thing for all of us to remember. Another thing, that big mistake that we made, we didn't talk to our young children early enough. My husband had MSA and was sick for 10 years, and my youngest was 5 when he started getting sick. So my son was 8 and my daughter was 5, and we just had such a difficult time. And John, you kind of touched on this as far as the difficulty in talking to others about it. There's almost, I don't want to say it's shame, but there's just something that, it's just uncomfortable. And it's particularly talking to young children and trying to explain a terminal diagnosis is really difficult. So, but the sooner you do it, the better off it is. My daughter had some real issues during his illness when the medical equipment will keep showing up. There'd be a new piece, there'd be like a walker and then a wheelchair. And, she had just one time just had a complete meltdown over all this. And then after that, I got some professional help, which I highly advise, particularly in those situations, to try to figure out how to talk to a child. Anyway, so that's something that sooner rather than later, don't try to hide things. It doesn't do anybody any good. And in the end, it's going to create more problems. The last thing I'm going to say is try to take care of yourself and be aware of your own body. In our MSA support group, we had several women who had pretty serious health issues after their spouses had passed. We had one gal that had breast cancer, another that had a stroke. I ended up having a real serious back problem. I was out of work for almost a year because of it. And these all happened after our spouses died. So, you think you're through it, but then it's like, okay, now your body is just kind of letting down or something. And now you can get sick. So you just have to be careful and, be aware and take care of yourself as best you can. So that's all I have. So, Robin, I think you're next.
Okay, I'll do just 3 of mine. And Doug said he would come back and do some more of his when we're ready for more people. So at some point, the caregiver needs to change his or her healthcare power of attorney document such that the spouse with the neurological disorder is no longer the caregiver's healthcare proxy. And this is especially important in the case of dementia. And I'm helping a friend of mine. Her husband has Lewy body dementia. And I asked her, who's your healthcare power of attorney? my friend, and it's still her husband with Lewy body dementia. And there's absolutely no way the person with Lewy body dementia can assist, be an advocate for his spouse.
Mhm.
So I advised her to, think of one of the kids or think of a close friend or something. Of course, the person with Lewy body dementia can be involved in decisions and can be um, to participate in any conversation that has to take place, and her feelings should be taken into consideration, but that person really is not in any position. And similarly, if somebody has not a dementing illness, say they have multiple system atrophy, it would be very hard if the person with multiple system atrophy is physically disabled such that they're not able to go to a hospital. Then it would be very helpful, I think, to have somebody other than the spouse be the healthcare power of attorney, the healthcare proxy. The second thing is these, I tried to come up with things I didn't think most people would mention. Another thing is if the adult child is the healthcare power of attorney and has financial power of attorney access to a parent's bank account, say the parent is receiving Social Security checks, and there needs to be some guarantor on the account, and usually it's adult child or the other spouse or something. In many situations that we've seen, when the when the parent dies and the adult child goes in to use that parent's money, the account access is gone, because as soon as a bank account is notified by Social Security that the person's died, all access is terminated. And this can really cause a lot of problems in paying for bills after somebody passes away. So really important to figure out a workaround. One workaround would be if the parent has a trust,
Mm.
and so it's a trust account, and then the adult child can be a named trustee on the trust account. That's a very easy workaround. A third thing that we've seen a lot in our caregiver support group is if spouses have a credit card account, and say the husband is the person with the disease, and the husband is in many cases traditionally the primary card holder, and the well spouse has a credit card on that account, but it's not a joint account. There's a primary card holder and somebody, the well spouse, who also happens to have a credit card. Similarly, when the primary card holder dies, then that well spouse no longer has access rights to receiving any information about that credit card account. You can't receive statements anymore, anything. So I encourage every caregiver to make sure that you have a credit card account in your name, that you're the primary card holder of that account. I think that'll solve a lot of problems down the road.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, do we want to, is Diane checked in? I can't hear you, Robin.
Sorry, going
Okay.
on and on. I don't see Diane yet, and I don't see Tim, and I've texted both of them. So you could either go back to Doug or go to some of the people who cannot attend who sent in some information.
Okay, well, I think I want Doug to finish. Let's hear what else you have to say there.
Okay. The first thing is if somebody, and I can't speak so much for somebody that's got dementia, but for somebody with a PSP or Parkinson's or CBD, something like that, there are always clinical trials kicking off, and the earlier you are in the process, the more likely you are to be accepted into a clinical trial. So if you're newly diagnosed or your patient is newly diagnosed, I highly suggest finding out if there's anything available UC San Francisco, it's got a lot of clinical trial information. Stanford does. I mean, so anyway, the sooner you can get into something like that, the more likely that you'll be accepted into a trial. Next one is caregiving network. Start early looking for a caregiving network. It's hard to find caregivers today. A lot of them, never reemerged from the COVID. So sooner than later, even if you may not need it at this point, it's still nice to reach out and at least start finding out what's out there, what the kind of prices that they're charging out there, and what kind of services that they provide based on and what you need. And I know in our area, we have a senior services network, which can be very helpful in doing things like that. Which tied to that is also to just be planning ahead. Right now, my wife has PSP and she's living at home, but just to start finding places that might be, a place to move at some point in time. And some places won't take palsy patients, just so you know. So it's something that just to find out what options are available to you if you get to that point. Because a lot of these places, they book out 6 months or more. And so it's always nice to know, know what your options are. And I think we've already talked about it, but to find out, everybody says, oh, you need to take time for yourself. But then when you're the caregiver, that's pretty hard to do when you're on 24/7 call. So somehow you need to figure out if there is any way that you can do that to break loose, to get some time for yourself, and easier said than done. But anyway, I highly suggest looking for possibilities where you can get away for some period of time, or you can do something, to clear your head and have some enjoyment.
Doug, I also, did you have anything you wanted to share about maybe the use step walker or wheelchair as part of planning in advance?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the problems we ran into, Diane has PSP, and as she progressed, by the time you get Medicare to pay for something, you're already beyond needing it, But so knowing early on what you need to do. So we started out with a cane. Yeah, that's how she started. And then she progressed to a standard walker. Then she progressed to a U-step walker. And then there's other stuff too. I mean, we needed to put a chairlift in. We live on the second floor of our house. And so in order to get her out of the house, we had to get to the first floor. And then the first floor is even up, 10 steps from the garage. So now we needed 2 sets of stair lifts. So planning ahead for things that you may need. And again, by the time you realize, hey, I really need that, it may be, 2 months out or so before you can actually get it. So, but anyway, so we've progressed beyond the U-step walker to now where she's in a wheelchair, and then she's progressed to where she's primarily in bed or a wheelchair. And don't, if you're dealing with somebody that's on Medicare too, something to be aware of. Medicare will pay for, I believe they'll pay for a U-step walker, but if you've already used your walker money for a standard rollator, so Medicare paid the $100, now you want the $600, you've already used it. So so kind of plan ahead and use your money wisely.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. It's good to know for many other things too, besides just people in this group. Okay, so we've got Robin, no Diane yet, I assume. So we'll move on. Okay, so Tim has not checked in yet. I don't have him.
No, don't see him yet.
Okay. Well, Denise, I see you're here via husband Mark. Do you want to add anything?
When Robin asked me just a little bit ago if we were going to have anything to share, and I always draw a complete blank, and my husband said, oh yeah, that whole thing with my dad. Well, both of our fathers had neurogenic orthostatic hypotension, which is low blood pressure when you change positions from laying down to sitting or sitting to standing. And it can actually also happen when if you have a big meal. My dad was in a fast food place one day, and he had his burger and his fries and everything, and then he just went catatonic. He didn't even move. He was still sitting in the chair. So we called 911, and that's what it was, is your blood pressure leaves your head, either because you stood up pretty quickly or because you ate a big meal, and now your body's concentrating on that digestive system. And we had 911 and in the emergency room and the whole thing with Mark's dad too after a meal. So my point is, just don't panic. So take care of the situation, find out that that's the problem, but then you should actually get it treated, or find out how to manage it well, because if it happens when the person is standing up, they become lightheaded and they fall, they can really become seriously injured. My father-in-law fell on, and you kind of think, okay, I'm not going to get hurt unless I fall on something hard like the cement or a tile floor or something, but my father-in-law broke his neck falling on hardwood.
Oh.
And they put a halo on to secure the neck, because it was very close to having caused death or paralysis. But then with the halo on, he couldn't move his neck at all, and so he couldn't swallow his Parkinson's medication, and he died shortly thereafter, after the surgery. So it's really important to when somebody starts getting lightheaded when they're standing up, to figure out what's going on and learn how to manage it. So that's my only thing.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just keep moving on to people that weren't able to attend, but sent some things in. This is from Allison. It says, my advice, if it's helpful to others, is not to assume that all congregate care is bad, or that your loved one will be less happy there. I agonized over the decision. Anguish was wasted, as my brother escaped his terrors and anxieties completely as soon as he moved into a locked setting. Turns out the bad guys could not get in, which made him feel super safe. No more delusions, nightmares, paranoia. Nearly overnight, he could tell he was safe. No more. He gets everything he needs under one roof. Excellent PT, his haircut, podiatrist, etc., along with professional caregivers that have allowed me to get back to being a loving sister. Stereotypes aren't always helpful. That's really very good. That's very, very helpful. Okay. This is from Dag, and I think he's just recommending a book here, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, by Bronnie Ware. So I've heard of this. I haven't read it. Robin, have you? You probably have. No?
No, I'm unaware of that book.
Okay. Anyway, so Dag thought that was very useful. This is from Mel. Don't be a hostage to circumstance. Find any and all ways to stay connected to the outside world. Second thing, look way ahead, way ahead, and plan to the extent possible. Scout out memory care facilities, daycare centers, respite care, in-home care, all of it. And that's pretty much what Doug was saying too. Feel and express that rage safely. Another good one. Find that caregiver friend with whom you can be completely honest. Okay, so I'm going into he had more than 4, but I'll continue with this. We should do maybe the rest of these later, Robin. Okay, so let me move on, because he's got a really long list. So Judith has these points. Don't move to a rural area where good quality healthcare is far away and there are no caregivers to be hired. Isolation is a terrible thing for both the patient and the caregiver. That's really true. This is from Lori. Try your hardest to get your cared one to do physical exercise. Be creative if the usual doesn't work. Get them a personal trainer at the gym, sign them up for boxing, get them a special bike, whatever works. I strongly believe that exercise slows down the progression of this disease and keeps people out of wheelchairs much longer. And that goes for the caregiver as well. Yeah, we all need to keep getting our exercise. As this disease progresses, it becomes more work to get your cared one out, and sometimes it's tempting to say, oh, forget it. Search out venues that are accommodating so there's less stress. The Bing Concert Hall at Stanford has gender-neutral bathrooms and good handicap seating. Most museums have wheelchairs for loan if your cared one gets too tired with a walker, and gender-neutral bathrooms as well. Invite your good friends over to your house for dinner, lunch, or whatever. It is stimulating for your loved one, and it keeps you from becoming isolated. If they are good friends, they will hang. That's really good. And this is from Lynn, and she says, my number one tip is to attend caregiver-only support group meetings and establish relationships with caregivers outside of the meetings. Find something you love to do that recharges your batteries and keep doing it. Work with a physical therapist and your family member to learn how to fall and how to get up after a fall. Okay, and this is from Michelle. Be smart about equipment. When my husband was diagnosed with MSA 8 years ago at the age of 52, we didn't know what we didn't know about equipment that makes the MSA journey easier. Since then, we have rented and purchased equipment that has been essential for helping improve my husband's quality of life and my experience as a caregiver. Two common challenges we have utilized equipment for are pressure sores and safe transfers. Unfortunately, the only equipment Medicare covers for safe transfers is a Hoyer lift, which has its purpose, but may not be the best solution for individuals who can bear weight and do not have severe hypotension upon standing. For these individuals, equipment that enables them to safely transfer while not being completely immobilized is a better solution for their health and well-being, according to medical professionals. Currently, we use a sit-to-stand lift. It's great for my husband, and it's easy to use for caregivers. A word of caution: not all sit-to-stand lifts raise an individual to a standing position and or fit through a narrow bathroom door. Consider equipment from the vantage point of the present and the future. Some equipment covered by Medicare is covered by Medicare. To get this equipment, follow your health plan's instructions. For non-Medicare covered equipment, shop around. If you don't have Medicare, check your health plan's evidence of coverage for durable medical equipment covered by the plan. Okay, so that is all I have here. We can go back up, and there were those points that I think it was Tim made.
Let's see. Mel had a few more that we didn't read.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So his fifth suggestion was, when friends ask yet again about LBD, CBD, MSA, or PSP, tell them to Google the disease. That's good. You're done. Also, when friends ask how are he or she doing, I just say the same. I deflect all idiotic questions that I've answered any number of times. Attempt to inform your friends about all that has been written lately about how people process grief. Educate. Drugs don't work for long anyway. Treat whatever obvious symptoms present: anxiety, sleeplessness, pain, but forget the cognitive memory stuff. Not worth it. Also, blood pressure and cholesterol meds are unlikely unnecessary at this point. And that depends on your disease. The blood pressure meds were very helpful with MSA. Make as much peace as you were able to with the concept of forever incurable. There will be plateaus, but the progression is downward. If the loved one is being mean, tell them. Expect that some of those closest to you will never understand or simply not show up. Find new friends. Be the one in charge. These decisions are impossible. There will always be someone who doesn't agree. Drag uninvolved family kicking and screaming into the light. No one gets a pass. There's strength in power and anger, but do not act like a victim. No one likes a victim who's always baiting for support. Stay tough. You can do this. Do not compare yourself to other caregivers. There will always be someone who is as faithful, caring, and loving as a lapdog. Then there's me. Yes, I promised in sickness and health, but there are limits. Everyone has limits. That's a good one. Okay. So that,
Okay, and Jane says she has some thoughts about medical equipment.
okay, great. Jane?
This may not be anything new to anybody, but very often in adult day health centers or senior centers, there's a repository, or the Center for Independence of the Disabled, which is actually called something a little bit longer now, but it's in every county. They often have repositories of equipment that people have donated after their loved one doesn't need it anymore.
Mhm.
And as an example, in Half Moon Bay, there's an adult day health center, and they have all kinds of walkers and wheelchairs and quad canes and stuff like that. And they often are good resources for knowing where you can find equipment that you do not have to pay for.
Right. Okay, that's great. Yeah. And Robin used to get I haven't seen anything lately, but people used to try to donate equipment through our caregiver group as well. So that's always another resource too.
Michelle was the one who had a long list here about equipment, and she was really an expert, and she bought a ton of equipment for her husband, and it became available in our local support group, and all went away to good places. And Diane, I know, I'm sorry she's not here. Maybe we can try to remember if she comes. She runs a loan closet, or helps with a loan closet in Burlingame area, I believe. And they loan out equipment to anybody, regardless of need, and they'll even deliver things like hospital beds and what have you. So that's, I'm sorry she's not here to speak about it, but if she comes, we'll hit her up.
I put a couple things in the chat also.
Very
There's
good.
a medical equipment loan program in San Carlos that accepts donations and makes loans. And Avenidas opened a lending closet in Palo Alto in 2020.
Okay, great. That's awesome. So should I read Diane's points, do you think, or should we wait for her?
I would go ahead and read them.
Okay, so this is from Diane. And she said, get help, get care help early, but framed as friend helping the caregiver. So this is, I know her husband had LBD and was kind of difficult. So in order, I'm sure that's what she meant, in order to get the caregiver in there, she had to say that, it was just a friend. So frame it however you have to do to get the help that you need with your patient. And this is another one, be prepared with all finances with password access. And that's definitely everything that you touched on, Robin. And I know Diane's a big fan of adult daycare classes. There's different facilities around. We never used anything like that. I don't know if anybody here has had experience with adult daycare centers or classes. Anybody, Jane?
I worked in one for a number of years as a PT, and I have to say, this is in Half Moon Bay. There was one in San Mateo, but they closed, and a lot of their clients came to us.
Okay.
But it's just can be such a wonderful opportunity, both for the client and for the families, because they usually run on a person-centered basis. So each person is interviewed. What do they like to do? What are they good at? What are their strengths? Whatever. And so the program is adapted individually, and it can be of enormous help to both.
Right, because the patient, basically the caregiver can just drop them off, right? So it gives them a little bit of a break as well, or
and there's a meal. There's a meal provided, but I don't know in other. This is in San Mateo County. I don't know other counties.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you for that.
Candy, Tim is here.
Okay, great. Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you have to add? What points do you have here?
Well, my experience is I was a hospice worker at Laguna Honda for like 12 years in the hospice ward. And the thing that I found so distressing to so many of our residents was the family's expectation of the patient. What condition are they in? And a lot of it had to do with their own distress, their personal distress, and their inability to get out of the way of their own, I'm going to say ego, but I mean, it's not, I'm not being that cold, but we had a young man who was, had been through a lot of drug problems and ultimately had to have a leg amputated, and then he had his voice box removed, and he was really a sweet kid, but communications weren't all that great. But his sisters came one day, and he had the ability to remove the apparatus that was adding oxygen to him from his neck, and they kept pushing it back in. And I could see that he was totally distressed by that particular activity. And I made eye contact with him and kind of had the sense that I was getting it right. And I took the sisters aside and I said, look, I know you guys may be, and undoubtedly you are, you're highly stressed by being here. It's very hard to see your brother in this condition, but it's a lot of this comes from quiet. A lot of the right thing to do comes from just quieting yourself and seeing if you can pick up cues from where he is. He can't speak, so that's not going to happen, but watch his eyes. And frenetic touching is another thing that I see a lot of people doing, is they feel like they have to touch the patient, and some of the touches are just they're repetitive to the point of becoming an annoyance. So the best advice I have, particularly for people who are coming to see someone for a first time and there's going to be a major change, is to take the time to make sure you're on the ground, take the time to be as present as you can be. And silence is perfectly acceptable, just being quiet. Touching is not mandatory. You will, if sometimes you can see an invitation to touch, and my tendency is to say, look for that invitation. And it's not about you, it's about them. So how can you get out of the way so they can get the visit that they want, as opposed to you grappling with the enormity of what you're seeing. And it's really hard. I've written a couple of short books on it, and I have, if you ever want to make a book not sell, put death in the title. It's just and one of them was about what working with the dying has taught me about living. And the second one was how to be with someone as they engage in the last days, weeks of their lives. And if anybody wants, Robin knows where to find me, and I can get you copies. They're not intense reading. They're actually contemplative things that are written about just sit and think on this for a while. But so much of the distress that's brought to the bedside is brought by the visitors. So my wife has my mom died of LBD, and my lovely wife has CBS, and I really have to try myself to not engage in the things I was talking about. And so for all of my real experience, the stress sometimes of the day, or the stress of seeing Nancy so uncomfortable, makes me want to do something. And there's just like, unless somebody knows an answer, when restless leg hits, I don't know what to do. And there's nothing that I've come across that gets me to help her in that. There's just some things you can't do. So what you do is try and create as warm and as peaceful an environment through your own actions, through your own presence, because we convey so much if we come in uptight. We convey way too much.
Mhm.
And then you got to find a way to blow it out somewhere else, you know.
Mhm.
Right.
So my stuff is, the hands-on part, I'm just learning as I go through. It's kind of amazing to have worked that many years in a hospice ward and seen your mother through her end. And my dad dies of Alzheimer's. So I've been around neurodegenerative diseases a lot in my life with all the major people in my life. But it's the first time with Nancy that I've been in a 24/7 position. And she gets exhausted from her disease, and I get exhausted from the care. And
Tim, I hate to cut you off, but Candy, Diane is here, and Randy also has things to
okay,
add.
no, that's all. Anybody wants to
Okay.
follow up? I've
Okay, well,
written.
thank you for that. And
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning hospice, because I'm a big hospice advocate personally too. So anyway, so Diane, hi. Diane? No?
Oh, let me ask her to unmute.
Mhm.
There I go. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was
already
outside
read-
doing
I already read
my
what you-
Christmas decorations, so I just totally lost track of timing. I'm sorry.
No worries.
Anyway,
Hey,
so
Candy read your three pieces of
Point.
advice. Did you want to say, could you, and there was some sharing about the loan closet. Could you share a little bit of information about the loan closet?
oh my goodness, yes, I can. In fact, I have the brochure right here.
Yay.
It's called Medical Equipment Loan Program. And oh, my other phone's going off too. We take intake medical equipment, and then we make sure that it's all cleaned up in good working condition, and repair it if needed, and then loan it to whoever needs it.
Oh, you're muted again, Diane. Can't hear
We
you.
can't hear you.
No. Did you mute yourself?
Doesn't say so on the
There we
screen.
go. No? Oh, I thought that's right.
She looks like she's not muted, so I don't know what's happened.
Uh-oh. Can you hear us?
I can hear you all
Yeah.
very
Oh,
well.
now we hear you.
Yeah.
You're
Okay.
back.
Okay. I've been having some kind of problems with my Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it looks like
In any event, what I was saying is we accept donation of used durable medical equipment. We intake them on Wednesday afternoons in San Carlos. And then we make sure that everything is clean and in good working condition. Then we loan it out on Saturday mornings at 1063 East San Carlos Avenue in San Carlos. Everything is free of charge. Many of the equipment is very wonderful, brand new equipment, and people get it without any fees whatsoever. You use it as long as you want. If you have any questions, call me. I don't know if you can read any of that.
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
The phone number for the program is, let's see, where is it? 650-590-9112.
Do they pick up
And
equipment?
you may pick up equipment on Saturday mornings, yes.
Do they pick up equipment?
If it's dire that you cannot get there on Wednesdays, we will arrange to pick it up if it's absolutely unable to do it if on your own. Sometimes I do that.
Okay.
And Diane, does the medical equipment loan program have a website? A
Yes.
webpage? What is that?
That is, you got your pencil handy?
Go for it.
It's freemedequip.org.
And it's in the chat.
R-E-E
Say that again.
FREEDEQUIP.org. O-R-G.
Okay,
And it's in the chat.
got it.
Oh, thank you, Candy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Nice to see you. I hope your decorations get done. It's a big job, isn't it?
Yeah, when you do things all alone, yes,
Yeah.
it can be bigger, and sometimes I kind of pare down, but this year family's coming, so
Good.
I'm
Good.
making sure it all goes up.
Awesome. That's good. Well, happy holidays. Glad you made it. So now we
Thank
have
you.
Randy. Is Randy here?
Here I am. I'm here.
Okay. So what do you have to add there?
So just a couple of things. So I'm coming primarily from the Lewy body perspective, so the dementia perspective, and kind of segueing onto what Doug said about asking for help. When you ask for help, and it's hard for a lot of us to ask for help. We're not used to doing that. We're used to being the helpers. Important to ask for help and be very specific. Say, you be at my house at 1 o'clock so that I can get out and have a lunch with a friend, or you be here at 1 o'clock and you take my husband, the patient, out to lunch. So if people want to help, what can I do? Let me know if I can help. You be very specific and have things lined up for people to do when they ask. Another thing is, and again, this sort of goes on with what Jim was saying in terms of pushing. If you think your loved one can do something, and this is apart from exercise and physical therapy, because that's really important. But in terms of us wanting to provide stimulation for our loved ones, and we think, well, they can do it, and this would be good for them. That's not always the case. We feel like it's going to be in their best interest. If it's causing and creating anxiety, let it go. Just let it go. Sometimes we want them to be engaged. We want them to go to the museum. We want them to go to a movie. We want them to do something. And all they want to do right now is sit in front of the TV. That's fine. Let them sit in front of the TV if that's really what they do. And along with that is traveling. Be very careful taking your loved one traveling. Stop traveling before it's too late. It's very disorienting. It's really challenging for them and for the caregiver. And then also medications. If you're there with your loved one, you're the one that has the best handle and eye on what's going on with medications. Doctors only know so much, can only do so much, and there are medications. You have to be there to know what's working and what's not, and what worked yesterday may not work today. What worked for somebody else may not work for your loved one. So it's really important that you keep an eye on it and have that dialogue with the doctor regarding medications, because they can be very effective. Then they can all of a sudden stop working. So really important. You're the eyes on that in terms of medication.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. It's awesome. So I know we've got other people in attendance here and I can't really see. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
I do.
Okay. And you are, I can't
Nancy.
see. Nancy, okay,
All
please.
right. Taking care of my mom with Lewy body dementia. This is specific depending on the mobility, but my mom is able to move around the house without a cane, and she can take a walk with a walking stick. She does have this come and go thing where she may need a walker in the morning and then it resolves anyway. But I have my alternate walking tool is, if she doesn't get her walk in, she can walk with her neighbor if she can. But if it's raining or inclement or whatever, I take her to Walmart and I drive the cart up to her, and that is her walker, and she can do laps around Walmart. I just walk in front of her and she follows behind me, and it's perfect for her to get exercise by pushing the cart around Walmart.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, my elderly mom, I would do that with her too. Not in Walmart, but she had dementia, I think. She was never formally really diagnosed, but and it was nice to be out too. It's like it's a little bit of a social experience as well. You know, there's other people around and get to see different things, and she always really enjoyed it. So thank you for that. That's a good one. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Bhushan. I
Okay.
need to say just one thing is that what I find is whenever my wife is she has LBD and it's in too much noise, too much, you know, even if you go to the mall and you're in the area where the, you know, food court is there, it's very noisy, gets overwhelming. Anywhere you go like that, it gets very overwhelming. And I don't know if other people have had similar experiences. The other thing about the exercise is sensitivity to cold, sensitivity to heat, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to this, that. It makes it very hard. And so what I found, what works for us is the treadmill, which I can convince her sometime to get on the treadmill, so that way at least something is done. What is everybody else's experience on that? I would like to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment. For those with the Parkinsonian type symptoms, you know, we end up going to doctor's appointments and hospitals a lot. And what they think is a handicap bathroom and what I think is a handicap bathroom are very different. And so I've been really pushing UC San Francisco. And if you go to any other hospital, I highly, you know, hope that you're pushing to get like commode chairs in their handicap bathrooms, because trying to get a patient that's got very limited mobility and potentially incontinence issues, using those bathrooms is a nightmare for me. So anyway, so I've been pushing them, especially in the, you know, memory care area where a lot of people are physically disabled, to basically have commode chairs available in each of their, you know, available on each of their floors. So anyway, any help would be appreciated there.
Okay. All right. Do we have anybody else?
Denise has something about mindfulness meditation teacher.
Okay. Denise?
Years ago, Robin had me setting up a speaker series, and one of them was a mindfulness meditation instructor. And one of her comments was that doing your caregiving at the speed with which the person you're caring for can do things is a priceless gift for them. Because we tend to do things quickly. We've got a million things on our plate. We've got 5 tasks going through our head that we've got to finish after we finish helping them to the bathroom or helping them get dressed or whatever. And we rush them. And just, if you can, use the whole mindfulness philosophy to slow down and just do things at the speed that they can do it is makes them feel like they're not a burden to you, like you don't have a million things on their plate, like they are important. And it just stuck with me all these years later.
Yeah, that's really good. I wish that I had a little of that training when I was going through all of it, because you do, you know, and then you get resentful and cranky and, you know, just trying to do too much. Yeah, for sure. So does anybody else have anything?
I'll do the 2 things that I didn't do earlier. They're both fast. In the category similar to what Denise just shared of profound things that I've heard. One thing I heard from a speaker a while back was we all want to be remembered. And so if you're visiting someone who's dying, say that you'll remember them. That's very important to them.
Aw.
And another thing is, we all want to be useful. And so find things that your loved one with a neurological disease can still do, even if it's fake doing, like, hey, here, could you
Busy work.
fold these towels, and you give them a load of towels, and then once they're folded, you take them back to the laundry and ruffle them up again and bring, oh, here, I have some more towels. Can you fold some more towels? So just something that the person can do so that they can feel like they're contributing to the household or the marriage or the relationship or whatever it is.
Robin, getting back on you're talking about, leaving kind of a legacy. But for those of you that are in Sutter palliative care, if any, they provided us an option that was paid for by a grant that they had to actually do a legacy video that we just finished, actually, that talks about life before PSP, life after PSP, message to the family, and all that kind of stuff. Robin, we have your website in there, so I'll send you a copy of it, Cure PSP. And so, but anyway, there might be potential options out there that maybe grant funded, where your loved one that has the disease can actually leave comments and, whatever they want to do. In our case, the video could be anything we wanted it to be, to leave on. So anyway, just a thought.
Sutter Health or Sutter Hospice?
It's Sutter Palliative Care.
Sutter Palliative Care. Nice. Yeah. I know in the past people have done the StoryCorps thing, which is a somewhat similar idea of, the StoryCorps ask people questions. I think once a week you get a question and then they compile the answers for you. And I think things like that are very sweet that they live on.
Susan, I want to say that one of the lovely participants in our group, Robin, is putting together a book about the progression of her husband's PD and having him comment through photographic essay and comments. It's just a beautiful example for how to leave a legacy.
Yeah, in that case, just to expand a little bit, it's just unbelievable. So the wife is taking photographs. I think is it indoors, the photographs are black and white, Susan, and outdoors the photographs are color.
Yes, the contrast, yes.
Yeah. And so she'll take a photograph, and one photograph she showed very recently was it was her husband had fallen and he was on the ground, and she had called lift assist through the fire department to come. And so with the paramedics' permission, she had asked, could I take your photos as you're helping my husband get back into bed? And there the husband was in Depends or something like that. He wasn't, it wasn't the the most dignified setting. And here these two burly, good-looking firemen were helping the husband get back into bed. And she took a photo just as this process was going on. And then she invites the husband to have some comment about these photos. And his comment was something like, I look like a rag doll because they've just sort of thrown me into my bed like a rag doll, but it takes incredible energy on my part to have just been picked up and put back into bed. And it was just such a beautiful vignette of their life together. And it's just this book that she's doing is just fantastic interaction between the two of them. Yeah, you're right, Susan. That's wonderful.
Well, and
Tim,
nice.
set you ready? Yeah.
Go ahead. You.
Tim?
Yeah. Jim, go ahead.
At Thanksgiving, I invited the kids to interview both of us, not trying to target Nancy, but just and ask all the questions that they can think of that would, be useful to them in their lives and their future. And just in composing a family story, or asking about relatives who are no longer with us, or how did we feel at different points in our career, and that sort of thing. And I got what I anticipated, which is basically zero enthusiasm or any effort to, like, yeah, let's get together and do that. So and I know, because I went through this with both of my parents, I didn't do it myself. And I did do a wonderful voice recording of my mom as she explained this picture when she was maybe 10 years old, of all the aunts and uncles and everybody were together. And I lost the friggin' disc. I cannot believe it. But those things are become important at times that you don't think about. My dad's last best friend died last week at 99. And I had gone down to visit him a couple of weeks earlier just to see if I could get answers to some of the questions that I was interested in, about what he talked about in terms of his family. And Roger knew virtually nothing. So, we can go on with our lives without knowing those things. But I've come to the conclusion that I can put our iPad up in front of Nancy and me, and we can just have conversations. And I can put it on YouTube as unlisted, and then send the link to my kids so that they can have the opportunity to watch it. It may be that it's too much to ask from them emotionally to sit there and ask us questions. But if Nancy's game, because she's starting to lose her voice, she's had procedures done at UCSF, but her speech is much slower. Her sentence structure is very simple, and it's very gravelly and low. So I think I've got to do this in fairly short order, but I don't know if others of you have thought about it, tried it, because the time to do it is before you can't do it any longer.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, and the patient has to be willing to, accepting of the whole idea that, they're not going to be around. So this is important, that they have to be in the right headspace too, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm without her full blessing, I wouldn't even try it.
Right, obviously, but I know that in our support group, there's been some pushback, when people have wanted, like loved ones have kind of wanted their patient to do that sort of thing. And I'm not dying yet, I don't need to, that sort of thing. So it's just,
Well, the voice thing is a good excuse, because
Yeah.
you're losing your ability.
Right.
The other question I had is, I'm going to do an interstate drive. We did it in October, and it was perfectly okay, to Colorado, where we have another house, and Nancy just loves it up there. The part that I'm a little concerned about is we're going to do it in February, March, when there's a lot of snow on the ground in Utah and Nevada and the like. And the concern was over restrooms, because those states don't have what we have in terms of ADA compliance and the like. How do you deal with a gas station and a ladies' room? Do I just go in and check, or tell me how to handle the restroom situation?
Mm.
Well, I would think that's the only option you have, is just to go into the ladies' restroom with her. I mean,
In
unless
the
they,
handicap stall.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but-
typically places aren't that busy. I would worry more about it, how dirty they are, but
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Any-
I think it's appropriate. I see John nodding his head. I think it's very appropriate to, as you go into a ladies' room, if you're not a lady, you say, I'm coming in and I'm
Yeah.
helping my wife.
yeah.
And we're going straight to the handicap stall, and usually,
Well, that's also interesting, because and the handicap stalls are almost non-existent. It's stunning to go across Nevada,
different
Utah,
places.
Western
Mm.
Colorado. That's just unbelievably. Well, it's just a different world.
I have one thought for you, Tim, is my sister, you can't rely on the rest areas anymore in California. They're pretty much all closed for renovation or something. And so she always stops at Costco because the gas is the cheapest. And then she goes into the Costco and uses the cafe and the restroom and all that stuff. And we weren't always able to find a Costco when I did a driving trip with her, but we also found that Lowe's hardware stores have the restroom in the front by the front door and the cash registers instead of all the way in the back like a Home Depot does. So that was our kind of go-to, is look at the map and see if we could find a Costco and we could get some gas and a snack at the same time, or go to a Lowe's. And they often also have like a food cart out in the parking lot.
Yeah, that's great. I
yeah,
hadn't broadened my horizons enough to see that. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Another question along those lines.
Oh,
We're starting to have balance issues.
Tim, could I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
We have a few more people who want to share some advice to others.
Go for it.
If I have some more time.
Yeah, I'm
Jane,
not shy,
did you
so
want
I'll
to
be
go?
happy. Yeah.
Jane, did you want to go say something?
Just briefly, I wanted to go back to something that Denise said, which was really helpful to hear, that somebody else does the same thing. But I'm very ordered and efficient and quick, and the slowing down is so important. I did a class one time with UCSF on biopsychosocial medicine. And one of the things that the instructor said, who's an MD, that whenever he feels that he's rushing, such as when you're waiting for an elevator and it's floors and floors above, and he just wants to take the stairs to get there quickly, just stop, because it's an opportunity to breathe. And I don't think we stop to breathe. So I always remember that. And when I find myself just gearing up, just to stop and breathe. So that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome.
There's a book out there right now, Thank You for Being Late. And it's written by Tom Friedman, New York Times reporter. And he said he had a buddy he was meeting for lunch, and the guy texted him or something and said, "I'm going to be late." And, was all apologetic when he finally showed up. And Tom said, "This was the most productive half hour I've had, forever," because no one bugged him because they figured he was gone and whatnot. So yeah, that's a great advice. Just when you're having to wait, make the most of it.
Yeah. Not fight it. Because that's what we end up doing, I think, a lot of times, especially during the caregiving business. It's just like, for me anyway, it was just like, it always felt like a fight, I mean, not fighting per se with my husband, but everything was just, I don't know, was so challenging. It was just always like, attack that thing. And, and that's not necessarily the best way for anybody to get through the day. So.
Yeah, and like I said, when Robin first mentioned this event, exactly what I thought of: slow down, and that's advice that I still give myself, and I think I'm better off for it. May not have gotten much done, but I'm in better shape for it.
Yeah, good. Okay, does anybody else have anything? We're kind of coming to the end of our time here.
I was going to say something to the gentleman that said the handicap restrooms are not easy to use, and I understand that, but what you could do is to take the walker in to set it around the toilet, so that then you have a handhold for her to push up from and help herself. Because most of the grab bars are on the wall and they're too far away. They don't work.
That's good to know.
Yeah, thank you. So anybody else out there? No, there's one thing that I didn't write down because I thought somebody else had, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but the either getting palliative care or hospice care involved much earlier rather than later. We were on hospice care for 2.5 years. And during that time, Bob went in and out of the hospital and we would just sign him off. Hospice would come to the hospital with paperwork, sign him off, admit him to the hospital with a UTI infection that he had. When he come home, call him, say we're going home, and somebody would be here that same day to just sign him back in. So I know things are different. That was like 15 years ago, we were going through that. And the palliative care model wasn't like a thing back then, which I think it's probably the way to go in today's world. But I think people resisted and they wait too long. And, you know, it's just, I don't know what we would have done without the hospice care that we had. So between the social worker and the nurses and just the entire staff, it was just really an amazing experience for us. So highly recommend. So get your, you know, get the information if you can earlier rather than later.
Always good advice. One thing I would be remiss if I did not add is make plans for brain donation well in advance. You can call us at the last minute at Brain Support Network, but better to do everything in advance. Certainly when your loved one is on hospice, that's a good time to make the arrangements, but even before hospice is even part of the picture is still a good time to make the arrangements. So thank you, Candy, for
Thank you.
moderating our
Awesome.
conversation again. Yet another successful joint event. And thank you to everyone for attending, and John for kicking us off, and everybody who shared notes and or advice. And again, we'll post the recording to our YouTube website soon, along with some notes that I'm sorry, I think I didn't put myself on mute a few times, but I've been taking notes, and Jordan has been taking notes as well. And thanks for everyone. And I wanted to mention a few things that are upcoming events. So next Friday, December 8th is our Menlo Park caregiver support group for Parkinson's folks, Parkinson's caregivers, and you should RSVP to that to me now. And then next Tuesday, next Thursday is, I know, Stephen's Belmont meeting, Parkinson's caregiver. That's an in-person meeting. Next Tuesday, you're in person, I think, aren't you, Denise, for your Parkinson's caregiver group? That's
Yep.
next Tuesday, 12th. And next Sunday, the 10th, is our Brain Support Network, PSP, Lewy body dementia, MSA, a caregiver support group meeting. And I'll be sending out the email invitations for that probably today. So you can RSVP for that. And those are our last. And we also have Tuesday, the 12th, another Menlo Park Parkinson's caregiver support group meeting. That's a Stanford Menlo Park meeting. So those are all of our last Parkinson's and Brain Support Network meetings for the year. And then
the adult child group meeting is moved from the fourth Thursday to the third Thursday on the 19th.
19th. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. And then in 2024, we have a multiple system atrophy symposium. It will be a joint with Stanford. It'll be a hybrid event. We just had a very successful hybrid event for Lewy body dementia caregivers, and that was in October. It was a hybrid event with Stanford, and we're going to follow that same approach. Another joint event with Stanford, multiple system atrophy, and that's on May 4th. So may the 4th be with you of next year. And Candy will certainly be involved in that. And next year, either June 22nd or June 29th. I'm sorry, we don't have a date yet, but we probably will have a date next week. Will be a PSP and CBD symposium, also joint event with Stanford, and a hybrid, so in person and virtual. And the Lewy body dementia group, the maximum in person was 100. We had I think half of that were people were there, and then the virtual is basically unlimited because we use a Stanford Zoom license. So I think it's 1,000, either 1,000 or 5,000, I forget. So basically unlimited. So
unlimited for us, yeah.
yeah, right. So stay tuned for those things, and we hope to see you all at our next event. And it's great being with you today. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.